Can you get the press to come to you? Now, you might remember that I mentioned Ilyana Stareva earlier this year when I was in Italy. She wrote this book called Inbound PR, and it's a book that's always fascinated me. I was reading it again on holiday earlier this year, and if you were listening to the episodes then, I shared some of the ideas from her book in that episode. And the idea is that you can get the press to come to you. Now, I had never actually connected with Ilyana before, and I really wanted to reach out to try and find a bit more about the thought process behind that book and some of the strategies within it. So we got talking, and as I always find when I'm talking to fascinating people in PR, I just had to press record because I wanted to share that with you. And we talked about just about all sorts of things, actually. It ranged from problems with modern PR, press releases and all this kind of thing, statistics, gaining data, how you prove the effectiveness of PR to management, to getting journalists knocking on your door. If you are listening to the show for the first time, it is the Public Relations Podcast. My apologies if you can hear some noises in the background, because I'm actually recording this off to the side in a fairly quiet room, but there might still be the odd announcement at Las Vegas Harry Reid Airport, which is where I've been for the past week at a conference, or not at the airport, but in Las Vegas, obviously. I mentioned that I was here last week, but let's talk about this book for now. I'll talk about more about this conference in an upcoming episode. So the basic principle of this book, when I think about it, is it's about creating content that journalists want. So, for example, you would be writing a news section on your website with regular stories, or at least a high-quality article, ideally regular, but one at least high-quality story. But this is a key thing. The article should be written as a clear resource for journalists and not for your customers. So it should include things like quotes, statistics they can use, information about the topic, all kinds of things that a journalist could then grab and turn into an article when they're doing research for what they're trying to find out. So the idea is that by approaching it this way, the content that you create is not just going to be indexed by search engines, but also act as a sort of Wikipedia-style page on the topic that you talk about, so whatever topic it is that you're talking about, that gets them coming to you. Once they've found that information, they learn that you know your stuff, they then get knocking on your door. As you know, I like to keep these shows quite short. So here's the first part of my chat with Ilyana, and I'll play the rest of this interview another day.
I think there are like really two key messages when it comes to the book. One is shift your mindset, right? Like think really with the big whys, the big numbers, like the big results you're trying to achieve, then figure out how you support them. And then two, make yourself like an inbound machine, which also suits for journalists, right? Not just for your prospective customers, because I think we all agree that whether we are trying to buy something, whether we're trying to, find information, if you're a journalist, you're trying to write stories. So you're actually actively researching as well, right? Like you go to Google and you search yourself and you read stuff and you dig into stuff. Nowadays, people want to self-solve. They don't want to go and talk to people, to others. They don't want to wait on phone lines, they don't want to send emails and all that kind of stuff. So it's really the same principle, trying to help anybody self-solve, regardless of what their search is. And so if you put yourself in the shoes of a journalist, they're trying to write a story and they need to support that story with facts and figures and quotes and interviews and all that kind of stuff. So, why not give them the means to self-solve themselves rather than them having to spend time reaching out to you or digging for the information or waiting for someone to get back to them and all that kind of stuff. Because, you know it yourself, right? Like you have to be very, very quick at all of that. You have to be agile as a journalist to get the story out. You have your own deadlines.
Yes.
So it's almost of a way, again, putting yourself in the shoes of a journalist and how they do their work and just making it so easy to them that it's just seamless.
Yeah,
that's
you give a bunch of ideas in the book, and we won't cover them all because people should read the book. But the concern I would have if I'm thinking as a small team or as one person is, look, have I got to go and write now a blog post every day full of detailed information? When am I going to run my business? So it's sort of playing out devil's advocate on this. How can people who are the smaller PR teams, or just an individual, one person running the PR, going to do this sort of thing? Because it is about creating content. It is about doing that, isn't it?
It is, and content is a lot of work. I have to totally agree with that. But again, it goes back to what is actually needed and why. What are you trying to achieve here? Again, the heavy lifting when you're building a newsroom is probably at the beginning, but then a lot of the rest is content you can repurpose And maybe you don't need to publish a blog post every day. Maybe you're fine with once a week. I mean, again, it really depends on your business, your needs, and what are you trying to achieve. There's not a one size fits all. For anybody who starts a website or a page or whatnot, it takes time to build it. That's just normal. It's really the heavy lifting that has to happen. And if it's a priority for you, you have to find the time.
Mm.
That's the crux of the matter. But I think it's really about being smart, because at the end of the day, it's not like even a small business, you don't have a million stories to tell. You probably have two, three key stories that you want to make sure that get out of there with a couple of different angles. And so it's really a matter of how do you um, sort of adjust that story based on your persona, right? Because it's the same story that will go to your customers and you'll go to the journalists as well, just shaped a little bit differently in terms of how you're phrasing it and putting the message out there.
So would you say it's quality rather than quantity, or are we
Totally,
essentially?
100%.
Go on, sorry, say
100%. I
again.
mean, yeah, the internet is so full of content that people just ignore. There's just too much noise. Um, so and that brings us also to the point in terms of, I mean, is really a news section on your website the right thing? Where will where will the journalist go to find all the information? Is that your website? And I think that's why I say a lot of times in the book, get to know your persona, and in this case, your media persona, in terms of how they like to do the work they do, where do they go to research? I mean, how they'd like to be contacted.
Mm.
And that's really that's where the heavy lifting comes into doing that research. And sometimes you just have to go and talk to these people and tell them, look, I'm trying to build a good relationship with you. I want to work
Yeah.
with you. Tell me how you work so I can adjust to you. And that goes a long way when you
Yeah,
say
it's
that.
always good if you can help them out with another story. I think that's one of the
Totally.
best
Yeah.
approaches I ever had from PRs, was when it wasn't even a story they were trying to pitch. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, I know someone that can speak to you about that, because instantly that person goes into your contacts book and they've helped
Exactly.
you, which
Yeah.
always creates that good, warm feeling. You're more likely to connect with them and give them their story coverage when they come through to you. It is a
Totally.
human thing, isn't it? That's the thing.
It's
Yeah.
teamwork. I mean, if you think about it, it's really the
Yeah.
same way as you engage with your coworkers in the same company you work at. It's the
Mm.
same thing you're trying to achieve.
A lot of PR people as well, I think, don't have any kind of journalistic experience. I mean, I know I've got a lot of people who are going through PR training, and students, university and stuff like that at the moment, and they're going straight into PR. So how do you think they can get more into the mindset of journalists so that they start approaching it from that side rather than the PR person trying to push it out?
Mhm. Well, a lot is also part of the education. I think for me, the big difference was that I actually studied business,
Hmm.
and I guess that helped also see a lot of these things. So I see a couple of things missing when it comes to PR education. And granted, things might have changed, and certain universities do better than others, but that business acumen is lacking. I don't see a lot of PR students being taught that. It's really all about like comms and writing and channels, whereas the proper business knowledge that should be out there. And the other one is, to your point, I mean, actually journalistic knowledge. I don't know how much they're taught, but it could be simple things like placements, and then go there and do an internship.
Mm.
Put yourself in the shoes of the person there. And in the training, maybe just that. Maybe it's a journalist who runs the training for them rather than another PR professional.
Another question I've got is about the actual content that you're creating. We're kind of talking about having a website with a blog, with stories, but are we talking about doing, Instagrams and Twitters and stuff like that? I mean, should people do what they feel comfortable with, or is it, as you said already, which is, well, where do the journalists go?
Yeah, I definitely say, where do the journalists go? Like, where do you get their information from? Because otherwise, it's just time wasted.
Yeah. But I mean, are you seeing any journalists sort of researching stuff on Instagram?
Not really, to be honest with you, no. Although I get a ton of outreaches from like PR or marketing agencies, but not directly journalists. I don't see them a lot on Twitter anymore. I don't know if the network is dying.
Mm.
They're certainly not there. I do get a lot of outreach on email. I think just because I think my personal email is public on my website.
Right.
So I get a lot of there. I get a few things on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah.
But I would say not a lot on Instagram or Twitter.
Yeah. So the main message of the Inbound PR book is basically, instead of going out there hard selling something that a journalist doesn't want, is create content that can help them write their story and basically get it out there again and again and again in blog posts so that people find it and come to you, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yes. Yes. It's basically speaking that, and this happens over time, right? It's not like from today to tomorrow thing. It's building your brand and like your PR brand out there so that it's so known that your respective journalists will be able to find you and they know that they can rely on you whenever they're writing a story.
So that is Ilyana Stareva. She wrote the book called Inbound PR, which is a book I have on my Kindle app and I keep referring back to because it is a great way of trying to get yourself into this mindset of journalists coming to you. Why should a journalist come to you? It's all sort of in there. So an action step for today, what could you actually do to actually turn some of this stuff that I was just chatting to her about? I mean, could you write just one high quality article? Remember what she's saying about high quality for a new section on your website that would be a useful resource for a journalist writing a story about something to do with your topic area that you would love to be approached about. Could you spend a bit of time today outlining an article that you could do and then maybe flesh it out over the next couple of weeks and get it online? Remember, she said it does take time for these things to start getting indexed by search engines, but when they do, they can be a powerful way of attracting journalists. More from her soon. Coming next week, just before I came away to Las Vegas, I had a really interesting conversation with one of Australia's highest rated breakfast radio show hosts. But it wasn't about radio or PR or anything like that. But what he did was a powerful lesson in a very personal style of PR, and I really wanted to share that with you. Also, in 2 weeks' time, by the way, I am heading to Denver, Colorado for a meetup with the company I work for. I'm going to be presenting a workshop there, so I'll share some of that with you as well, and also see if I can get some PR-related chats in that episode too. Final thing to mention before I end this episode, the new website is coming. I promise. I've just been so busy. I'm trying to iron out a few issues with it, so stay tuned to the show for more details on that, and I'll let you know about that as soon as I can. Speak to you next week.